and play on 2nd and 10. That's his youth right there.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
Today I'll be continuing with my college football schedule preview and point spread prediction videos with the LSU Tigers. So usually I use ESPN to get my schedules, but for some reason ESPN wasn't showing all of LSU's games, so I had to use a different way. But if the date of the game is in yellow, that means it's a home game, and if it's in white, that means it's a road game. So LSU's non-conference schedule has two guaranteed wins against the McNeese, who's an FCS team, and Louisiana Tech, who was not a bad Group of Five team last year, but will not be of any challenge to LSU. But their non-conference schedule is not extremely easy because they host Clemson, the second meeting of a home and home series between the two teams. And going into last season, this was considered to be the second biggest non-conference matchup because these were two of the most hyped teams and loaded rosters in the country. And this year, it's not going to be considered to be as big of a game because one of those two teams is still hyped up, and that's LSU, mainly just because they got Lane Kiffin, because LSU's roster has actually downgraded from last year, but not near as much as Clemson's has, and I think that this is probably going to be Dabo Swinney's last season with Clemson, so the pressure on Lane Kiffin to win is not only starting in his first season, but in his first game. And LSU has five different conference opponents compared to last year. So last year they played Florida, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Oklahoma. And instead this year they will play Kentucky, Mississippi State, Auburn, Texas, and Tennessee. And it's similar in that last year they played two bad teams, Florida and South Carolina, and then they'll play likely two bad teams again, Kentucky and Mississippi State. And Oklahoma was the best team of the four teams they played last year that I just named. But Texas, who they play this year, is expected to be an even better team than Oklahoma was last year. And Vanderbilt, who they played last year, was a good team. But I think having to go on the road to Auburn and Tennessee will make up for the toughness of that game. So overall, I'd say the conference schedule is pretty similar to last year in toughness. And this is a tough schedule to where I think 11-1 is the ceiling because I don't see any chance of LSU going 4-0 against Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Texas. And it's tough enough that if LSU goes 10-2, I'd say they're a lock to go to the college football playoff. But with Kiffin coaching them, it's hard for me to imagine them doing any worse than 9-3. LSU has two extremely tough stretches on their schedule, with going on the road to Ole Miss and then hosting Texas A&M and then hosting Alabama and Texas and then going on the road to Tennessee. Tennessee is tough mainly because of the environment. Tennessee's home environment is very similar to LSU's in that even if Tennessee is only a middle team in the SEC and LSU is around the top of the SEC, Tennessee's home crowd could be enough for them to pull off the upset. And Ole Miss and Texas A&M and Alabama and Texas are likely going to be the four best teams that LSU will play. So it is nice that they get three of those games at home. But the one game of those that's on the road is probably the game that they would like the most to be at home. Ole Miss. Because this Ole Miss game, I think, is LSU's biggest game of the season, and I think it makes it even bigger with Kiffin having to go back there than had LSU hosted his former team. And Ole Miss, when it comes to tough environments to play in the SEC, they don't rank near the top. But this will be a sellout crowd, and it will be loud in this game, and there's going to be a lot of booing, no doubt. And Ole Miss has only lost one home game in the last 3 years, and now that was under Lane Kiffin. But for Lane Kiffin's SEC opener as the head coach of LSU. He couldn't be under higher pressure because he left Ole Miss thinking that he couldn't win a national championship there and that he will win a national championship at LSU. But so if he were to lose to his former team, of course, he won't be fired because of how he does in his first season at LSU, but he would already start to feel the heat of the hot seat. And LSU will have three permanent opponents of Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. It's no surprise that LSU got Arkansas as a permanent opponent because LSU Arkansas has been kind of a rivalry. And if you're an LSU fan, I think you'd have to be happy to see it continuing because LSU has dominated this rivalry, winning 12 out of the last 15 meetings with Arkansas. And there's no reason to think LSU's dominance in this rivalry is going to go away anytime soon. I do expect this to be a close game though, because it usually is pretty close. But I am surprised that LSU got Texas A&M and M and not Florida as a permanent opponent, because Florida was LSU's cross division rival back when there were divisions in the SEC. And this will be the first time since 1970 that LSU won't play Florida. And if you're an LSU fan, I think you'd have to be upset about this because LSU has owned this Florida series as of recently, winning 6 out of the last 7 meetings with Florida and Texas A&M, unless Blake Baker can come up with a way to better stop Marcel Reed, which he hasn't been able to do at all these last 2 years. That game is probably going to be a loss. And this is being done in a way that the LSU Alabama rivalry won't have to come to an end for any amount of time. And me being a college football fan, I'm glad it's not coming to an end. But if you're an LSU fan, you may not be happy that it's not coming to an end because Alabama has owned you, winning 13 out of the last 15 meetings with LSU. And for that reason, I think the bye week comes at a good time in between on the road at Auburn and Alabama, because Auburn can be a very tough place to play, even though I know they didn't win any home conference games last year. Whether Auburn is 6-0 or 0-6 in this game, it's not going to stop 80 something thousand fans from showing up to that game and screaming really loudly. If there is a minus at the beginning of the spread, that means that LSU is the favorite. If there's a plus at the beginning of the spread, that means that they're the underdog. A 20 plus spread is a blowout, and there's two of those, Louisiana Tech and McNeese. a 10 to 19 spread is medium, and there's three of those: Clemson, Kentucky, and Mississippi State. A 6 to 9 spread is close, but there'll be a clear favorite, and there's one of those, Arkansas. And a 1 to 5 spread is almost a complete toss-up, and there's a six of those: Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Auburn, Alabama, Texas, and Tennessee. So if I had to guess exact spreads for these games right now, I'd say LSU would be a 10-point favorite over Clemson, but only because it's a home game. On the road, that would be in the 6 to 9 range, and I'd say they'd be about a 30-point favorite over Louisiana Tech, and at least a 50-point favorite, probably even more, against McNeese. And I'd say LSU would be about a 10-point favorite over Kentucky, and about a 14-point favorite over Mississippi State. Not because I think Kentucky's going to be better than Mississippi State, but because Kentucky is on the road and Mississippi State is at home. And I'd say LSU will be a 7-point favorite over Arkansas, but only because it's on the road. At home, that would be in the 10 to 19 range. And I would say LSU will be a point or two underdog to Alabama, because even though the game is at home, Vegas does seem to have some Alabama bias. But I wouldn't be surprised if, when it comes time for that game to be played, if LSU was a slight favorite. And then Texas, I think will be favored by a point or two over LSU, but I wouldn't be surprised if, because that's a home game, if when it comes time for it to be played, LSU is a slight favorite. And I'd say LSU will be a 3-point favorite over Tennessee, only because it's on the road, though. At home, that would be in the 6 to 9 range. I'd say Ole Miss will be a 3-point favorite over LSU, only because it's on the road. At home, I think it would be the other way around. I'd say LSU will be a 3-point favorite over Texas A&M, because it's on at home, and on the road it would be the other way around. And I'd say LSU will be a 4-point favorite over Auburn, only because it's on the road, though. At home it'd be in the 6 to 9 range. So that'll be it with this video. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.